Hello and welcome. This recording covers highlights from a series of finance core concept sessions that we've held over the last several months. The objective of Core Concept Series is to help users become familiar with Workday terminology and concepts before they receive training in the spring and summer. Having some familiarity with Workday before going into training will help you retain the training you receive. So that is our goal for you today, to become familiar with Workday terminology and concepts, especially related to the finance processes. If you wish to take a deeper dive into any of those topics that we cover today, listen to the longer recordings available with links on the training page of the Enterprise Project website. Today we'll start with an explanation of FDM, the Foundation Data Model. We start with the Foundation Data Model, or FDM for short, because it's the data structure inside Workday that supports OSU's Workday business processes, whether those processes are financial or non-financial. The FDM is the replacement for the chart of accounts that we use today in PeopleSoft and in Great Plains. Workday has the flexibility to allow finance, HR, and student to have their own data structures with unique work tags and terminology, but all within the same system. That is why with an HR presentation, for example, you might hear about supervisory organizations. In student presentations, you could hear about academic units. Those are work tags that are specific to human resources and students. We're going to look quickly at those areas and then dive into financial work tags. An important work tag for human resources is the supervisory organization, or SUPORG for short. Here we see an example of a SUPORG hierarchy, which allows us to see who reports to whom from an HR reporting perspective. For student, the hierarchical structure looks similar. As an example, academic unit is a work tag that allows us to see the hierarchy of departments within colleges. This example shows 3 departments that are all part of a College of Arts and Sciences. And now we get to a similar illustration for finance, showing an example of a cost center hierarchy. We're using the College of Engineering as our example to show how different cost centers roll up in Workday. The example shows 2 schools, the Knowlton School of Architecture and the Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering School, each rolling up to the College of Engineering, and with the lower cost level centers rolling up to them. Let's look at a report that shows how we can easily drill into the lower levels of this hierarchy. This is easy to review in Workday, so we'll take a look right now. We've now moved over to the Workday applications. I'm going to enter some letters to use to search. I like using a sources and uses report called Sources and Uses by Cost Center. Selecting Sources and Uses by Cost Center brings us to a prompt set. When you have a prompt set in Workday reporting, if you use a report over and over again, you can set a filter. We will use filters in some of the other demonstrations, but today I'm going to show you at this very first demonstration how to set the filter. For organization, I'm going to look at a cost center hierarchy for engineering. Once I have that entered, I'm going to select a period. We have historical data in this environment, so I'm going to go to fiscal year 19. And I'm going to go to period 12. After that, I can select a time period. One that I like to select is current period year to date, which would be something that most people would use. For ledger, I'm going to choose actuals. For amount type, I'll choose activity. And for budget structure, I'll choose operating budget. Anytime that you want to save a filter for future use, you could type in a name, like test2, and push save. And then you can see that that filter will be there for me the next time I want to come in and run this report. If I select OK, it runs the report. I want to look at the engineering academic departments. So I can push for more information. And I can scroll down and look at the departments that I have available to me. We were talking about the Knowlton School of Architecture, so I'll search for more engineering there. And you can see the cost centers that roll up to Knowlton School of Architecture, like landscape architecture and city and regional planning. Now we're back at our discussion of FDM because I want to point out the different types of work tags. Balancing work tags include company, balancing unit, project, fund, gift, and grant. These are work tags for which we can produce full balance sheets. Carry forward work tags allow us to carry balances into future periods, just as the name carry forward would suggest. We have 5 of those: cost center, assignee, program, activities and events, and loan. We also have additional work tags that allow us to define transactions with sufficient detail that we will no longer need user-defined work tags like we do today. And you can see that these include things like ledger account, function, financial class, academic period. Not every work tag is needed on each transaction. The 4 marked with asterisks are required: ledger account, balancing unit, company, and fund. Account is derived from the revenue category or spend category work tags. So in those cases, they would be required. Let's look at an example of how spend categories drive the ledger account. In the spend category hierarchy example, we are looking at the supplies ledger account and different spend categories that roll into that account. As I said on the last slide, ledger account is a required work tag, but we do not need to know that the account number for supplies to post transactions to supplies. In this example, we show two spend categories: chemical gases and cleaning supplies. And when those transactions post, Workday looks to the spend category hierarchy to know the ledger supply account. Let me show you how easy it is to drill on the account from a report to see the underlying detailed transactions that rolled up on an account. Now we're back in Workday to show you a demonstration of how we can look at account and how that is derived and how it looks on transactions. We used a sources and uses report before, and I'm going to use another version of the sources and uses report to demonstrate for you. We're going to use sources and uses by fund group. And we talked about setting a filter, and to save time, I have some filters set that I'll use for this demonstration. I select the filter that I had already created, and that will populate the prompt set. When I push OK, we're looking at a sources and uses report for electrical and computer engineering. You can see that we have a number of sources and uses in different fund groups. When I want more detail under uses or expenses, I would push for more detail anytime I see the gray circle with an arrow. I'm interested in uses for the demonstration. I can scroll down and I want to look at supplies and services. So if I want more information about this number, 2,343, if I wanted to go into journal line detail immediately, I could push that button. But I want to look at this in more detail before I look at the account. So if I push the arrow, I can look at this in more detail by several parameters. We'll start at first by cost center, and then we will sort by ledger account as well. Anytime I add a second parameter, I just need to push refresh, and it will bring that in. So I can see that in electrical and computer engineering, I have $900 in supplies. If I want to look at those supplies and find out what account underneath the supplies ledger account, I'll open this up at journal line detail, and we can see our first expense, $762.60. If we scroll across, the spend category is lab and scientific supplies that would be derived from the purchase. As we just saw, Workday knows just how to select the correct account for us. And now I want to describe some other ways that Workday helps us keep our data clean. Data integrity is incredibly important to us at Ohio State. And as such, there are rules configured in Workday to help us keep our data clean by preventing us from creating transactions with incorrect or disallowed work tag combinations. First, we have related work tags to assist us with data entry by pulling related work tags into a transaction. One example is when a cost center is entered and the correct balancing unit and function default. Next, there are allowed values which specific work tags to be used in conjunction with one another. For example, a user will be restricted from selecting an arts and sciences balancing unit with an engineering cost center, because that's not allowed for the rules in our system. Third, custom validations allow us to create specific rules to restrict or guide the use of certain work tag combinations. For example, the gift work tag is required if you're using a gift fund. You may be wondering how to create new values. We have a process to control the creation of new work tags that is different than what we have today. We are discontinuing the practice of creating user-defined values. So when you need a new value, you will complete a form to describe your need, and we will try to find existing work tag combinations to satisfy that need before we create any new ones. To help you learn the new work tags in Workday, we have a translation tool that tells you how PeopleSoft and Great Plains values converted to Workday. This tool will be available to you before we go live. Earlier, I said the FDM is the data structure that supports all of OSU's Workday business processes. So now let's take a closer look at our financial business processes. There are approximately 50 end-to-end processes within the financial and supply chain areas. Each one of them is not listed on this slide because each bullet represents a group of processes. For example, in customer accounts, you'll find processes for accounts receivable, incoming funds, collections, and internal suppliers. Over the past few years, the business process team reviewed each of Ohio State's financial business processes, and working with the business process owners, determined the configuration of processes for the future state in Workday. These business processes really are the engine that keeps our business going. Now we have inputs into process design. We didn't do this in a vacuum. In addition to talking to our end-to-end users and process owners at OSU, we reached out to a variety of external groups to receive input about efficiencies, challenges, and best practices in their current and future planned business processes. We talked to peer institutions like Arizona State University, Brown University, University of Southern California, and Yale. We talked to other organizations outside of higher education. We talked with consultants on other Workday and non-Workday transformational programs in industries like government, healthcare, and manufacturing. The project team gathered all of these inputs and came up with the recommendations to improve OSU's future processes. We were able to recommend changes for many of our financial processes to make them more streamlined, simplified, and consistent across the enterprise. And there were also many processes that were recommended that we did not change. Before going any further, let's make sure we have a clear understanding of what we mean by a business process. Simply said, a business process is a series of steps that you take to accomplish a task. It's how you get things done and in what order. In finance, this could be something as simple as updating a direct deposit payroll account or as complex as an accounting adjustment. The enterprise business process team worked closely with both the university, like colleges, units, and the Office of Sponsored Programs, and the medical center, OSUP, OSU-HP. They worked with finance roles to determine future business processes. Where we were able to see opportunities to standardize processes across the university and the medical center, we made those recommendations to make business easier for all units. I should point out that the steps of a process are not necessarily performed in one system. Many Workday processes rely on process steps in other systems with highly specialized functionality, such as Epic, TAS, eBuilder, and SIMS. The data from those systems are then integrated with Workday for streamlining reporting. By bringing data all together in one system, we created a single source of truth for OSU, something we have never had before now. This is a significant benefit for our move to Workday. In our current environment, we do not have a single source of truth. We have many different systems and processes for creating and reporting transactions, which makes it difficult to know what data is accurate, what isn't accurate. And many times, by the time we know we have accurate data, is so dated that it is not at all that useful. We will still use several systems, but they will be integrated with Workday in a way that produces a dependable single source of truth. A benefit of having data in one reliable place is that the opportunity for earlier analysis, which then leads to better decisions. When we have more frequent integrations and real-time reporting, we will have greater transparency into more of the full financial picture sooner. Having more time allows us to focus on strategic decision-making versus only transactional thinking. I'm going to show you a demonstration of reports updating in real time. I'll show the final steps of a spend authorization for approval, and once approved, how that will update commitments in real time. And the results will be immediately reflected in those reports. So to get started, we're going to go back to the sources and uses report. I'm going to go back to the sources and uses by fund group. I have a different filter set for this demonstration so we can look at the data on a smaller scale. I'm looking at a cost center within education and human ecology with an assignee. Once I run the report, let's take a look at the commitments. So we have encumbrances of $1,885 and $713. Now, if we produce a spend authorization, once that becomes approved, this should change the encumbrances, and that will happen in real time. So let's go back to our home screen. And for this exercise, I need to proxy as another person at the university in order to complete the business process. Please note that the proxy function is for testing purposes only and will not be available in production when we go live. For this exercise, I'm going to proxy as Kelly Crawford in the College of Education and Human Ecology. Now we are testing on behalf of Kelly Crawford. So I will look in her inbox, and I have already staged a spend authorization. And after Kelly carefully reviews and sees that everything is in order, she would approve. Now I'm back at the home screen, and I will look at the sources and uses report one more time. So we'll go back to sources and uses by fund group where we started. We'll use the same filter where we started. And if we scroll down, we see that we have a significant change of $1,000, which is the amount of that spend authorization in our pre-encumbrance. Because this is travel, it will go into the pre-encumbrance category for our FD 100 for assignee Douglas Shari. So this really is instantaneous upon achieving approval and successfully completing the business process. This will immediately reflect in your reports. So as you were able to see at the end of the approval process, we really are living in live data. Workday knows the next step in the process and who needs to take it. This automated workflow is controlled by security roles. So now we're going to take a closer look at how that works. Security roles grant us access to our work and control both what we can see and do inside Workday. In addition to granting access, security roles restrict us from seeing data that we don't need to see. In Workday, there are two types of security roles. Domain security provides access to what a user can see. For example, you can view things that are necessary for you to do your job, and as an employee, you can see personal information such as your pay slip. The second type of security role is what controls what you can do, and those roles are very tied to business processes. For example, depending on whether you are an initiator of transactions or an approver of transactions, what you do will be different. This slide shows a user who has a unique job number assigned to them in the HR system. The job number is important because that is what security roles are tied to, which is different than the way we assign security today. Also, it's important to know that the job number is not the same thing as a position description or career roadmap, although there is a strategic alignment with HR on those efforts. The senior fiscal officers in each unit have assigned security roles to each job number within their units to ensure each person will have the correct security to perform their roles successfully in Workday. Because security roles are not assigned to individuals, when you move to a new position, you will not necessarily keep your security roles. The security roles that are tied to our business process is what it makes it possible for us to control and ensure we have segregation of duties. We want to mitigate the risk of a transaction of any sort flowing through without the appropriate review and approval. To illustrate segregation of duties, this slide shows a 3-step process that requires different people to perform each of the steps. The locks underneath each user represent security role permissions, and you can see that the first user is only authorized to do the first step. The second user can only do the second step, and so on. In this example, the first user might be authorized to initiate a transaction but not approve it. In step 2, the second user is authorized to approve the transaction as a cost center manager, and the third user is authorized to approve the transaction as a grants manager. As you saw in the last demo, once the initiator created a transaction, their name was removed from the remaining steps of the workflow, making it impossible for them to approve their own transaction. I mentioned live data earlier. In the current state, there are transactions and reports that we cannot see until the end of each month. With Workday, we'll be able to see more financial transactions posting immediately upon approval, no longer needing to wait for scheduled batch processing. The waiting game to get to the end of the month to see how things will look will be minimized. We won't need to compile data outside the system in order to see what it will look like in a report. These more frequent and real-time updates allow us to live in live data. Reviewing data throughout the month is a best practice where it is possible, and this is a shift in mindset for many of us. We can look at reports throughout the month to begin our analysis before the end of the month. This can help with workload balancing throughout the month so you don't have to do all of your analysis during close at the end of each month. We also use the phrase living in live data to refer to any data that is visible in the Workday system sooner than it was in prior systems or with prior processes. Payroll is an excellent example. Today, we don't see payroll expenses post until the end of each month, but in Workday, it will post as soon as payroll is processed each time payroll processes. We also have systems that will continue to operate outside Workday that will continue to update with the same frequency as they do today, but will provide more data to Workday. An example is the advancement system, or TAS. It will send over more gift attributes than it does today, so the reports will have more data and there is greater transparency inside of Workday. But let's talk a little bit more about the mindset change. When we move into Workday, one of the changes we will experience right away is the way we think about reports. This shift starts with us seeing live data. No longer will we need to wonder if something has posted or posted correctly. We can see that our transactions have posted and we can see the effect in reports. As soon as we pull a report in Workday, we will have questions and can begin our analysis. The shift is this. Rather than waiting on pre-specified reports to be produced to answer our questions, we can drill immediately into the reports we see online. Workday makes this very easy so we can quickly begin our analysis. Remember when we had a demonstration earlier and we drilled into supplies ledger accounts to see the specific types of supplies that had been purchased and by whom? We can take action directly from the report we are looking at. Now I'm going to demo another example of drilling into a report to answer our questions. We're back in Workday, and now we're going to go back to the sources and uses report that we've been using all through the demonstrations. I'm going to go back to sources and uses by fund group, and just like before, I'm going to make use of setting a filter so that we don't have to go through the prompt set a second time. This time we're going to be looking at the University Airport, cost center 11799 in the College of Engineering. I push OK, and I would like to make a note, this is staged data. We wanted to make a real contrast here so that you could see what we're talking about. But we have total sources of $2,000 and total uses of $233,799, giving us quite a negative net margin. So if you were the cost center manager for the airport, you would have some questions, and you can start to answer those questions right here in this report. So we would drill into our uses to see what this might be all about. So I do see a significant deficit in my salaries, which concerns me. And now I would want to investigate where this is coming from. I would have drill down capability. And instead of looking at journal line detail, I think the first thing that I would like to do is look at this by ledger account. When I bring this to ledger account and refresh, I can see the kinds of staff and faculty that I have appointed in the University Airport cost center. So that would begin to take me down the path that I would need to follow in order to figure out what's happening. Do I have salaries appointed in this cost center that shouldn't be? Do I have too many people here? So now I'm shifting my thinking to sources of funding. And if I wanted to do that in this very same report, I could look at our total sources. Do we have funding that's missing? We only have a tuition and fee subsidy here, which may not even make sense for the University Airport. So this would give me the information that I need to investigate the issue. We can also use another report, the managerial gift report, to look at our funding. And I'm going to look at University Airport once again. I'll put in the cost center, and that will narrow down the report for us in the work tags prompt. So if I've determined that I do have salaries that are all in an appropriate place, what other sources of funding might I have? So in this report, I can immediately pull up all of my gifts. But if I needed to understand the purpose for those gifts, I also have that information that's now coming right in from the TAS system. So this is another example of how our systems will be partnering with one another. If I wanted to look at what the restrictions are for this gift, I could figure out what we can use this gift for. So it supports the ongoing operations of the Ohio State University Airport, which means that this may be an appropriate source for me to use to cover some of the salaries that are in my uses lines. So you can see now that we have much more information in Workday without having to leave to look at the TAS system and help us to, in more real time, solve the problems that we have before us. So I think that now you can see how easy it can be to begin to analyze data as soon as we can see it in reports. Shifting our behavior to review revenues and expenses that we can see earlier in this month as soon as we can will allow us to make better, more strategic decisions based on the information we see. This is the value of living in live data. Should you have questions about the topics covered in today's summary session, I encourage you to listen to the recordings of the other core concept sessions which go into more detail. You may also be interested in other information about training, which you will find on the same page as the links to the recordings. Most questions can be answered by reviewing these resources. This concludes our recording for today. Thanks for listening.